去年我们经济总量已经达到110万亿。
Last year, China's economic aggregate reached 110 trillion RMB yuan.
高基础上的增长，从世界方面来看。
We expect China's economy to continue to grow on this high base. But experience in the global sphere has shown that it will be very hard for such a big economy to keep up a medium-high growth rate.
我们今年确定 5.5%.
You said that a 5.5% GDP growth target for this year is viewed as ambitious by many economists. I recall that at last year's press conference, a journalist asked me whether a 6% GDP growth target for that year was a bit too modest.
我们不是没有感到，因为
My response was that we were actually aware of the possibility for even faster growth of the Chinese economy because of a low base of the previous year. But still we decided to set the growth target at above 6%, meaning that we left possibilities open for even faster growth, say 8%. We would welcome that. But at the same time, we set all our macroeconomic policies, including fiscal, monetary, and employment policies, against this 6% GDP growth target. Under such circumstances, we cut our budget deficit ratio. There was a steady decrease in China's macro leverage ratio, and we reserved policy space for coping with new challenges this year.
2020年，我们在那么严峻的形势下，没有搞大水漫灌、超发货币。
In spite of the severe situations in 2020, we refused to resort to flooding the economy with massive stimulus or excessive money supply. Hence, we saw that last year China's CPI rose less than 1% despite the high inflation worldwide. I think that very much has to do with our reasonable macroeconomic policies.
当然，刚才我讲的，我们制定宏观政策是从中国。
We formulate China's own macroeconomic policies based on China's own national conditions, and I have no intention to make comments on the policies formulated by other countries here.
经过
Last year, under the strong leadership of the CPC Central Committee, with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, and thanks to the joint efforts of people across the country, we successfully achieved the major economic and social development tasks and goals, and laid a good foundation for our development this year.
且不说各种复杂环境在变化、不确定因素增多。
This year, we face new downside risks and challenges. There's a lot of complexities and rising uncertainty. On the basis of over 100 trillion RMB of GDP in China today, a 5.5% increase would generate the same amount of output equivalent to the size of a medium economy.
不过10年前还是50多万亿啊。
Say, for 10 years ago, when China's GDP was just about 50 trillion RMB yuan, this growth rate would only add some 6 to 7 trillion yuan of output, but now the figure would reach 8 to 9 trillion yuan. One can draw an analogy with mountain climbing. In climbing a 1,000-meter high mountain, covering 10% of it is a distance of 100 meters. But for climbing a 3,000-meter high mountain, 5% of it will already cover a distance of 150 meters. Moreover, the higher one climbs, the lower the pressure, the less oxygen. So a slower growth on the surface actually now carries more weight.
实现5.5%的左右的增长，实质上是在高水平上的稳就是进。
We aim to achieve this about 5.5% GDP growth target for China's economy this year. This kind of steady progress is very important in itself, and it needs to be enabled by the support of a series of macroeconomic policies. Take fiscal policy, for example. We lowered our budget deficit ratio to 2.8% this year, a decrease of 200 billion yuan over last year. But we will beef up government spending this year. One may naturally ask how to pay for that. I have set it out in the government work report. We will draw on the savings that we did not tap into over the past 2 years, meaning we will use the surplus profits from state-owned financial institutions and state monopolies, and there will also be some surplus from the fiscal funds. In total, government spending this year will rise by no less than 2 trillion RMB yuan. Most of it will be used for tax and fee reductions and tax refunds, just like providing oxygen supply for mountain climbers. At the same time, we are prepared to roll out a series of financial and pro-job policies too.
如果说我们今年采取的应对举措是短期的，
Our policies set for this year are based on the current realities and have also taken into account long-term development needs. They are sustainable.
提到的，中国还有应对气候变化、收入差距。
China is still faced with a series of challenges from, say, climate change, income gap, debt, and demographics. We are prepared to forcefully respond to all these challenges for now and beyond.
关方面的措施都在安排部署。中国现代化还是一个长期的过程。我们
China's modernization is a long process, and we will address issues arising in the course of development through development.